Hello, ninth graders. This is Miss Sherwin speaking. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the elements of fiction. I would recommend pausing this video if you have not already downloaded or made a copy of this week's document for the elements of fiction that was paired with this presentation. If you don't know where it is, it's exactly where you found this link for this video back in the Week 2 folder for Elements of Fiction activity. We will be taking notes throughout this video, so that is why you need that document today. All right, now we're going to start taking some notes. So today I'm going to walk you through just 2 of the 4 elements of fiction. What I mean by elements of fiction is that in any work of fiction, we can analyze and look at plot, conflict, characterization, and point of view. So today I'm just going to be talking to you about plot and conflict. I guarantee that at some point over the last few years, one of your English teachers showed you this plot line. So this is exactly how the plot of, I would say, most stories looks like. Of course, it can differ sometimes, but we have our exposition at the start, rising action, climax at the top, a little bit of a falling action, and then finally resolution. So what do all these pieces mean? Well, we'll start with exposition. As you can see on the right, I've got Harry Potter as my example today. I am a huge Harry Potter fan, and I hope that you are as well. So we'll be using that series as my example. So exposition is the beginning of the story. This is where we get to meet characters, we understand what the setting is, and we also get to find out what the main conflict that drives the story is. So exposition in Harry Potter is when he maybe realizes that he's a wizard, he is learning all about himself and this new world that he has become a part of, and that sets off our entire story. So if you haven't already, start filling in your notes. If you need to go back at any point, feel free to do so, but otherwise I'm going to continue on. So next point of plot is the rising action. This is the majority of our plot diagram. It's taken up quite a bit of story. So it consists of the main events of a story, and it actually focuses on the events of increasing tension between the exposition and the climax. So this could be all the fun adventure stuff that happens in the majority of a story, such as Professor Quirrell telling the students at Hogwarts that there's a troll in the dungeon, or Harry competing in Quidditch and finding many different mysterious things around Hogwarts Castle. On to climax. Climax occurs very close to the end of the story in most cases. It is considered the most important part of the story because everything has been leading up to this event or happens as a result of this event. Okay, that's why on our plot diagram it's kind of like that peak. Okay, everything has been building up to this moment. The climax usually signals that it's at the end of a problem. So as our protagonist or our main character has been being developed throughout our story, maybe their conflict that they carry along has driven the story. At the very point of that climax, that problem is either solved, or the character learns to live with the problem, or in some very sad, unfortunate cases, our character actually dies, and that is kind of the solution to the problem within that climax. Next step is falling action. Usually it's a very brief part of the story, okay, that occurs between climax and resolution. It deals with the direct result of the climax, and it's when we wonder, how do the protagonist's actions from the climax affect him or herself and other characters? So if we think about Harry Potter, maybe after that climax when Harry first meets Voldemort in the first book or movie, if you are more of a moviegoer, we might begin to wonder what happens to the other characters in the story because of this moment. You know, what happens to Professor Snape or what happens to Neville? And then finally, we have our lovely resolution. Okay, this is the very end of the story when it ties up all loose ends. Of course, we do know that if you maybe are reading a book in a series, sometimes the resolution doesn't tie up all loose ends because it may go on to the next book, but in most cases it does a pretty good job of, ending things. Okay, so we see Harry waving goodbye to Hagrid as Hagrid says, "Bye, Harry," on the way away from Hogwarts on the Hogwarts Express. All right, Now we move on to our second element of fiction, the last one that I'm going to talk about in the video today. Don't forget to keep filling out your notes. If you need to go back at all or pause, feel free to do so. The second element of fiction that I want to talk about is conflict. So I already mentioned conflict. Remember that we actually know the conflict of the story in the exposition of our plot diagram. So conflict is just another word for problem. So what's the main problem of the story? It's introduced at the beginning, and the story focuses on that problem and how to fix it. Now, there are many different types of problems or conflicts, okay? We usually break it down into two different categories, external conflict or internal conflict. So I'm going to talk about external conflict first. External conflict, it could be person versus one of the following. It could be person versus person. So we have like Batman and the Joker over here. We have person versus nature. So maybe there's like somebody trying to survive a crazy storm. That could be person versus nature. Otherwise, we have person versus society or a larger group of people, person versus machine, or person versus the unknown, which could be very spooky for all we know. The other type of conflict is internal conflict. So that's always going to be the person versus themselves. But what part of themselves is that conflict? So it could be about their own fear. So maybe if you have a phobia of like spiders or something like me, that could be your own internal conflict. You could also have an internal conflict with yourself and maybe your own values or morals or your feelings. And that is the end of our presentation today. If you need to go back and view this video again, feel free to do so. Don't forget that you are going to be finishing up this note page. You are going to be looking at the very end of the note page where it asks you to follow a link to a Pixar short called Jerry's Game, where you're going to watch that and answer just a few short questions to apply the plot diagram. And then don't forget to submit that to Schoology by this upcoming Wednesday night at 11:59. Let me know if you have any questions at all, and have a great day.